when Combs didn't get his way, he was violent, and he subjected victims to physical, emotional, and verbal abuse so that they would participate in the freak-offs.
The freak-off, a term that has now not only become synonymous with Sean Diddy Combs, but it is at the center of his federal sex crimes case. We're going to explain some of the major accusations and details surrounding the freak-offs and what this could mean for the indicted rapper. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law and Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. There is one term that has gone viral since the indictment of Sean Diddy Combs, more than anything else. You've heard it here on Sidebar, you've heard it amplified in the media. It is called a freak-off, this alleged sexual performance that is at the center of this criminal case facing the rapper and producer Sean Diddy Combs. And I'm going to go over some of the details of these freak-off sessions as laid out in the government's indictment and in their subsequent letters that they filed with the court when they argued against Combs' bail, which, by the way, was denied twice. Now, he's currently locked up in the Brooklyn Detention Center. Combs is facing charges of racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, transportation to engage in prostitution. We've mentioned it before, but he could be looking at 15 years to life in prison. That's how serious these charges are. But the main theme here, the main allegation, is that Combs led a criminal enterprise. And the goal of this criminal enterprise, other than to operate a global media and entertainment business, was to engage in the abuse of women, sex trafficking, forced labor, prostitution, the distribution of drugs, to use violence and threats, to commit crimes like kidnapping, arson, bribery, obstruction of justice, to carry out their goals, their missions, all the while making sure to satisfy the sexual desires of Sean Combs. And one of those desires, as alleged by the government, by prosecutors, and also alleged by several Combs accusers in separate civil lawsuits that they filed against him, were the commission of freak-offs. So with that in mind, now we're going to get into these shocking details surrounding these freak-offs. And I guess we should start with saying, what are freak-offs, right? Well, let's go to the indictment. It says, quote, Combs and other members and associates of the Combs enterprise wielded the power and prestige of Combs' role at the Combs business to intimidate, threaten, and lure female victims into Combs' orbit, often under the pretense of a romantic relationship. Combs then used force, threats of force, and coercion to cause victims to engage in extended sex acts with male commercial sex workers that Combs referred to as, among other things, freak-offs. Freak-offs were elaborate and produced sex performances that Combs arranged, directed, pleasured himself during, and often electronically recorded. Now, while this indictment came down, I said at the time, this may be a term that is foreign to any person that was not familiar with Sean Combs, but for me, who's been following this whole saga for, a year now, I have heard this term multiple times, because in the Cassandra Ventura lawsuit, Combs' ex-girlfriend, and Rodney Little Rod Jones lawsuit, this is Combs' former producer, they discussed the freak-offs in their sexual assault lawsuits. Now, Ventura alleged, among other things, that Combs would demand her participation in freak-offs and that she would have to be forced to hire the male sex workers and that this could happen at any random moment. Jones alleged, among other things, that Combs' son Justin Combs and DJ and record producer Stevie J would engage in freak-offs. Now, to be clear, those specific allegations, those names, those details were not mentioned as part of the criminal case. I will tell you, though, that the idea of this freak-off, now that it is officially part of the criminal case, now that it's mentioned multiple times, this makes me wonder two things from a legal point of view. Number one, it is such a wild concept and a phraseology that it's hard to believe that this is something that was just made up by Combs' accusers. And when I say Combs' accusers, could that be Ventura? Yes. Could that be Jones? Yes. Perhaps the government got this information, this idea of the freak-offs originally from them. And by the way, when I say Combs' accusers, could be Ventura, could be Jones. Perhaps the government got this idea of the freak-offs from them originally, but we don't know. To be clear, we do not know for sure. We do not know who the accusers are, the victims are in this criminal case, who the government's witnesses are, whoever those people may be, because we don't know for sure who is cooperating with the government right now. But the bottom line is the idea of the freak-off, there's enough there to substantiate it that the government is moving forward with this. And again, it is so wild. It's such a wild concept to come up with that I wonder if an argument will be made that, look, jury, this has to be true. No one can honestly make something like this up.